Hi, right. Today we're going to have a little bit of a talk about tennis and combat sports and how we can kind of take some of the ideas from tennis, take ideas from boxing and combat sports and transfer them across to tennis. As a strength and conditioning coach, I'm always sort of looking for, looking at other sports, looking at ways that we can kind of take the qualities and values and training ideas from other sports and bring them into tennis, and how we can kind of, use all the great ideas from other sports into our sport. It always kind of, I've always considered tennis to be pretty similar to combat sports, and I've seen it called boxing with a net. And I think that's absolutely true, because we've got, a very gladiatorial kind of nature. It's quite often one-on-one, at the most two-on-two. And we're hitting something. I mean, at least in tennis, we're hitting a ball rather than a person, but we're still striking. So the comparisons between the two are really valid, in my opinion. And being the kind of slightly sad, boring S&C coach that I am, I was kind of flicking through some journals and came across a really, really interesting article, well, interesting for me, which was looking at the contributing factors to punching force in combat sports. And I read through it, and it was kind of a little bit of a review of certain studies and certain research papers, and a couple of sort of points really, really leapt out at me. And it was looking at kind of the fact that elite boxers were considered to have a much, much greater contribution to the punch from their legs. And there was another further study that basically looked at saying that the elite boxers had a much greater punching force. So I kind of put those two ideas in my mind, and I was thinking, okay, so if we've got a greater contribution from the legs, and the greater contribution from the legs results in a greater punching force, is that something that we can look to sort of bring back into tennis and try and increase the power of the stroke? And it kind of coincided a little bit with some other work from a guy called Dr. Stuart McGill, who'd done a lot of work with MMA fighters. And his idea is, and it's become a little bit of a mantra of mine in my programming, was that mobile hips and a stable core results in a greater punching power. So I kind of put all of these ideas in my head and sort of percolated them around a little bit. And I was thinking, okay, so let's take that mobility through the hips, stability through the midsection, use the legs, link the kinetic chain, and kind of let's see what we can do with some exercises and some strength and conditioning interventions to help with our tennis strokes. So that's what we're going to look to do today. Now, please, please, please don't get me wrong. If you want to increase your general overall strength and contribution from the legs, you've got to be doing your basic, your traditional kind of strength exercises. You've got to be squatting, you've got to be lunging, got to be deadlifting, and all those variations. So please don't think that I'm taking those away from the program. Those are going to be your staple. Those are going to be your basics, your big rocks in your programming. What we're looking to do is kind of, are there some supplementary exercises that we can do that maybe can look to sort of have that linkage from the lower body, transfer it through to the upper body, through the strong and stable midsection. That's what I was kind of looking to kind of go through today. So that's what we're going to do. So we're just going to go through a few exercises and see how they are. So I'm going to get Johnny to come in and help me out. Thank you, Johnny. So the first exercise we're going to look to do, and bear in mind that as we do this, kind of principles are few, but methods are many. So as we do this, I always take the idea of what I'm sort of getting at. And what I'm getting at is trying to use that lower body link through the kinetic chain, mobility through the hips, stability through the midsection, and get that force and that power through the upper body and in through the shot. So how you want to go about that, these are just some ideas and some examples. How you want to go about that could be different, and that's absolutely cool with me. That is fine. As long as you adhere to kind of the principles of it, that's fine. I always think as an S&C coach, if you can justify the inclusion of the exercise in your program, that's okay. So the first one we're going to do is just using the chair. We're going to do what's called a Bulgarian Squat with a little rotation. So we're going to try and incorporate some rotational aspects to a lot of these exercises. So as Johnny comes down into the squat, as he comes down, he looks to rotate. So just rotate as you're coming down. And then as you're coming up, you're getting that rotation back out. So as you come back up, you can get a little bit more of a rotation through on the other side as well. Lovely. That's it. That's it. Go one more time. Brilliant. Good man. Thank you. So we're just going to go through a few sort of reps of this today, rather than sort of think about sets and reps and numbers that you might want to do. So we're just going to go through some examples. So that's the first one there. So what you're looking at there is as you're coming up out of that sort of that split squat, you're incorporating the rotation. So you get the rotation on the way down, rotation on the way up, trying to get that drive up through the legs. As you saw with Johnny there, bar was out in front of him, gives you a nice little reference point to keep that straight line from the chest to the hands. So there's not too much of an over-rotation through the back. Next one is you've got a few different things. It's like a hip airplane. Again, it's one sort of Dr. McGill has put forward. So similar kind of idea. So 1 foot's elevated. You can do it without a foot elevation, but you can 1 foot elevated. And instead of having a knee dominant kind of bend, you're looking to get a little bit more of a rotation through from the hips there. So just keep that angle there. And then just go down. And then come up and through. So looking to close the hip here, and then open it there. Lovely, that was a nice one. So get that close of the hip, and then open of the hip. Lovely. So a couple of slightly different ideas in terms of using that sort of that rotation, that stability through the midsection. Just going to go for a plank to a side plank. So again, most of you have probably done a standard plank and maybe a standard side plank. So just cross the hands over. Lovely. And then from there, what we're going to look to do is rotate from the forward plank position into a side plank. So go for it, Johnny. Lovely. Then come back. And then come the other side. And what we're looking for, go again, is the whole body moving as one unit. Careful. And then come down. So not letting the hips go too early. And up. Lovely, good, nice one, relax there. So again, looking to keep that stable midsection through as you're kind of coming up through the shot. So that all goes together, like you would do on there. Brilliant. From there, we're going to go into a little bar rotation. So I'll work as the anchor point for Johnny here, so I'll just hold the bar. And what we're going to look to do, probably could do with being just a little bit higher, but we'll do what we've got here. And then looking to rotate down, and then up. So if Johnny keeps looking forwards, so you get a nice sort of little bit of a bisection through the lower body and the upper body, and just try and load that hip a little bit more. And again, just do, and go one more for each side. And again, and up, lovely, thank you. So what we're looking to get there is that load through from the hips, so you keep the eyes looking forward, load through from the hips, and then boom, up from it. So really loading up through the glutes, and driving up from the glutes. So the main force of that, which I hope you felt was coming through from the hips, from the low body, rather than pulling through the arms. Yeah. So it's there. So the arms again, just a link in the chain, boom, and up. So normally I would do this with maybe a little bit. Go that way a little bit. I'd do this with kind of like a long bar off a cable, but a tube will work just fine. So just go arms out a little bit, and then from there, just going to look to load up through the legs, and then rotate up and through. And again, load up through the legs and rotate up and through. Good, lovely. Just come back a little bit more on the back leg. Boom, and up and through. So you get a nice driving force through from the back leg. Lovely, good man. That's it. So the back leg again, boom, comes through. So again, the arms with just a little bit of a link in the chain, and the drivers from the legs. Thank you. We'll take that and make it a little bit more kind of what you might recognize as tennis-specific kind of movements. So we'll take it, so this time hold it from there, sort of one hand over. And then we're just going to go for like a forehand or a backhand kind of shadow shot. So come down and load a little bit more, Johnny, bring the arms back a little bit. Bring the arms back and then up and through. And again, just looking to load up through the legs and up and through with the arms. And we can do this as a little bit of a closed stance as we've got here, and then we can just open the stance out a little bit. So we can just have a little bit of a play around with some of the stances to try and develop the strength and the power through from the legs at every position. Lovely. So those are kind of more strength-based exercises. So we're going to look to go for some increase the power. So again, name of the game is sort of power and speed. So now we want to really try and load up and use the power that we've got to drive that stroke kind of force. You can do this one with a step to jump onto, but we haven't got a step today, so do you want to come here? So we can do a standard box jump, which I'm sure many of you have probably done, so which is just literally jumping up onto a box. So just imagine you've got a box just right in front of you and just jumping up. So here it will be just a little bit of a squat jump. But again, looking to develop power. And then what we look to do as well is get a little bit of a rotation into it. So if you imagine you can do this with a box of any kind of varying height to give you sort of something to refer to. And what this does, you get the power from the legs, but you also just incorporate that rotational aspect into it as well. Good man. We can take that a stage further and go into a 180-degree med ball jump. So using the med ball just gets a little bit more load. You can get a little bit more specific with the rotational movement. Good, so as soon as you land, come back up again. So as soon as you land, come back up again. Up and through. That's it. Lovely. Now we're talking. Good. And relax there. Good. So again, as you come in from that, as you rotate with the ball, it comes down, it automatically loads up through the backside, and you have to generate the force through from that hip to get the rotation through to the other side. Nice one. So that's a little bit of power production. We're talking kind of in terms of power production is kind of limited or certainly affected by your ability to reduce force. So your ability to reduce force will kind of help in terms of your ability to produce force. So what we're going to work on here is Johnny's ability to kind of absorb the medicine ball, which will really help him to load up through the backside, which he can then use the energy for to explode through. So we just want to come into a little bit of a closed stance, a little bit more closed. Lovely. So I'm just going to throw the ball and for Johnny to catch over the knee. And hold, and then just throw it back to me normally. Good, lovely. Just let it come back a little bit more. There we go, good. So as this is coming, he's got to absorb. That's going to store a whole heap of energy in the backside here, which he can then use to produce some force. So I can manipulate that a little bit by either throwing it a little bit higher, get a heavier ball as well. You can throw it a little bit higher, so there's more force to control coming down, or can even throw it a little bit faster, so he's got a little bit more pace to deal with. Lovely. So that sort of works on the ability to reduce force, to absorb it. Now we're going to work on the actual throw. So we're going to get the ball. We're going to use the heavier ball to start with, because we want to work. Then it's going to work a little bit more sort of strength, speed. And what we're going to do, we're going to do 4 throws with this ball, and he's going to throw it at me, give it a launch. And then we're going to have a contrast phase with a slightly lighter ball. So when you make the weight a little bit lighter, hopefully it should really fly, and it's a really good way to develop force and power. So he throws it. Good. And he's gone into an open stance here. Just set before each one, wait there, and then go and throw. So go one more time. Good. So there's 4 with the ball there, with a slightly heavier ball. Take it away, and then go 2 without. Go on, really launch it, Johnny, really launch it. Boom, there you go. So you've got to commit to that. If you want to generate some force, you've really got to commit to the throw. So try and throw that as hard as you can with good technique. Take it away, then throw the lighter one with good technique. Johnny went into an open stance position there. You can play around with it. So you can play with some various positions, but just trying to generate force from a lot of different positions. So those for me are kind of just a sample of some exercises that you can use to sort of, use the lower body to generate the force and power to help sort of stroke production and force production in your stroke. Thank you.